I'm Logan Crawford, and right now on Spotlight, we're taking a look into the gripping story behind the 1976 swine flu vaccination campaign with an amazing author. His name is George Naddra, and his book is called Swine Flu-1976. This thrilling investigation uncovers a Russian blackmail plot that led to President Ford to vaccinate millions of Americans while the rest of the world stood by. Join us as we explore the dark secrets and political intrigue that almost caused a global health crisis. We're delighted to have this very talented author join us here today on Spotlight. We thank the team at Atticus Publishing for helping us put him in the spotlight today. And we ask viewers like you to support authors like him by subscribing to our channel and by purchasing his amazing book. The links are below this interview. George, great to see you here today on Spotlight.
Logan, thank you. Thank you for having me.
My pleasure. It's an amazing book. You uncovered parts of our history that I think few people know much about. Let's turn back the hands of time. People are into rock and roll music. They're wearing blue jeans and bell bottoms, and the guys have long hair. It's 1976, and Ford is president, not a hugely popular president. He had been hand-selected by his predecessor, Richard Nixon, one of the first appointed presidents, I think. But now we have a scare, a flu outbreak, swine flu in New Jersey. And let's pick up the story from there.
Sure. Yeah, this is a story how in 1976, Russia developed a virus, and they used that virus to blackmail America. Just to give it perspective, let's go back 40 years, just as you said. And 40 years ago, I want to just start off by saying I'm going to be giving you 3 facts that are real. Now, the story I've written is a novel, so it's not real. It's not a real story. I mean, it's a story tied to real events. And the 3 key events that were actually happening at that time, 40 years, one was a virus of its own, which was a very powerful virus, scary virus. We knew little about it, how it came about, and that was the virus AIDS. And we all know AIDS killed about 40 million people worldwide. So that was what was going on in my mind 40 years ago when I wrote the book. The other thing that happened was in 1976, as you mentioned, President Ford launched a program to vaccinate all of America against a very, what he called deadly suspicious virus. Not too many people knew about that virus, and he actually had to recruit Dr. Sabin and Dr. Salk to convince the American public that there was a real scare. So they basically produced that vaccine. But what was interesting, although they were worried about a worldwide pandemic, no other country in the world wanted that vaccine. No other country in the world vaccinated their people. Mm-hmm. So that was a very strange thing that really happened in the real world. Now, what's also strange was after about several million Americans were vaccinated, President Ford canceled that program in 3 months. So we have one thing on my mind when I wrote the novel. We have a virus that reminded us of AIDS. We had President Ford going through this exercise, which was still not too, people didn't understand it. And then on the third thing that was happening 40 years ago, which ties into my story, is that the Soviet Union was under tremendous political pressure. They were trying to make sure they could try to hold on to their satellite countries. You know, East Germany, Poland, all those other satellite countries, to include Ukraine, were getting ready to break off from the Soviet Union. So my story dealt with 3 real facts, and I wove together my little novel that goes through and explains what was taking place during that time period.
Amazing. It feels very real because you did tie it to real events. The 1976 swine flu vaccination campaign did turn out to be basically a boondoggle because the pandemic never materialized, and there were a lot of ill effects from the vaccine that was promoted at the time. So this is quite a story and very, very believable. And you've got a great audience for this book now because we all just lived through the nonsense of 2020, right?
True, very true. I think it's going to be interesting. The book itself is kind of in 2 parts. The first part basically describes how Russia developed the virus. And when they did the virus, they made the vaccine that could cure the virus at the same time. That's what gave them the ability to basically blackmail America. So when America was blackmailed in my novel, they had to produce the vaccine and they had to do it very secretly because what was in the vaccine were ingredients that should not have been in a normal vaccine. And in order to keep that secret, what they had to do was they had to monitor the people who were building the vaccine, and that was all done in one plant. And in that plant, two scientists got very suspicious. One was named Dr. Clayborne, and another one was a Dr. Matson. And both of them, because they were coming close to the truth, had to be eliminated. And one was through an accidental hunting accident, and the other was through an accidental car accident. So that's the start of the story. The first part was the vaccine, what took place in 76. If I can, the second part of the story, you jump forward 11 years. And one of the son of Dr. Clayborne was at his high school 10-year class reunion. And at his class reunion, he found out that when his father died, one of his co-workers died at the same time. And a reporter who was also writing a story about the pharmaceutical company that was making the vaccine also died. He became suspicious. And the second part of the story is his effort to uncover the truth as to what happened and what was going on in that company when they did make the vaccine. And the further he got to finding out, the further the government investigated him, watched him, and the closer he came to the truth, the more and more his life was placed in danger. So there's kind of like two parts of the book. That was the second
Amazing.
part.
It's a great story. It's a thrilling story. Like I said, it feels very real because you've tied it to real events. Have you envisioned this as a film, perhaps?
Well, this is strange because I say I wrote it 40 years ago. And when I wrote it 40 years ago, I was in Korea. I was a lieutenant colonel in Korea. And on the weekends, I started drafting the story. So my story was on yellow pad. Okay. That was my story. We didn't have computers, a typewriter. But then when I came back, I did get it typed up. And I thought about the only thing I would like to do with it, maybe make it for a TV story or something like that. I had no agents. I just got into my real world again of work and hard work and put it on the back burner. During COVID, I was spending time with the wife, and she said, I married you for better or for worse, but not for lunch. So we were together too much. So she said, why don't you take the book that you were writing and actually publish it? So I didn't publish it until the real COVID because she said it was pretty close to what was happening to us at that time.
Wonderful. Yeah, especially the element of Russia creating the virus and the vaccine almost seems to echo 2020. Was that a newer element you put in the story or one you thought of back in
Well,
40 years ago?
that's one that I thought 4 years ago because since they made the vaccine, that's how they blackmailed America. They
Right.
said, we're going to let you have this vaccine. So if we do ever release this virus, you know, your people will be protected. So that thought was placed 40 years ago.
Amazing, amazing. Very prescient, no doubt, in light of what happened during the pandemic. Are you working on any other books right now?
I'm not an author.
Okay.
It's the only book I ever tried to write.
Yeah.
I just enjoyed doing it. I thought it had a good plot, had a good story.
Yeah.
I enjoyed doing it. I had one person review it. That was my daughter. She's an English major, and she just checked my spelling and grammar and helped me out. That was it.
Wonderful, wonderful. Well, you did a great job on this book, and your support system there at home helped a lot in getting this perfected. The name of the book is Swine Flu 1976. It's an amazing novel that reads like nonfiction. The story outlined within the pages is very, very plausible, echoes 2020 in many ways, even though, as the author has mentioned, it was written decades ago. And it is about a thrilling investigation that uncovers a Russian blackmail plot that led to the United States president to vaccinate millions of Americans while the world stood by. It's an amazing story. It's a story of intrigue. It's a story that should be made into a film. So Hollywood, if you're listening, this would be a great movie. You have something to add, George, before we leave today?
Oh, just one quick thing. I got some reviews on the book, and all the reviews were good except one. And the one review that wasn't good, the person was almost halfway through the book, and he realized it wasn't a real story. And he was thinking it was a real story all the time. And he said, I didn't know it was a novel till he was halfway through the book. So it was a fun read for me to do, a fun write for me to do. Thank you for your
Exactly. And that's a great complaint.
Yeah.
It was too real. You know,
It
it
was
gave
real.
me nightmares.
That's
Why
right.
didn't I know about this back in 1976?
Very good.
Wonderful.
Okay.
George, thanks so much for joining us here today on Spotlight.
Thank you for your time. Appreciate it.
I appreciate your time as well. To the folks at home, I'm Logan Crawford, thanking you for your time. This time until next time on Spotlight.